Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Empty Cloud Monastery. So today we'll be going through a short sutta from the Samyutta Nikaya. So the Udaya Sutta, Samyutta Nikaya, chapter 7, sutta number 12. So first we'll pay homage to the Buddha, and then I'll start going through the discourse. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So as mentioned, we'll be having a look at the Udaya Sutta from the Samyutta Nikaya. So I'll read through the discourse, and I'm going through the Pali text here. So I'll be talking about the meaning of various words as we go along. So this particular discourse is, as mentioned, is from the Samyutta Nikaya. It's from the first major section. The Samyutta Nikaya is divided into 5 books, so 5 main sections. The first one is called the Sagata Vagga, which is the section with verses. This first book of the Samyutta Nikaya is composed primarily of poetry. Poetry, Pali poetry is a little bit different from most of the poetic forms we're used to in English and in other languages. So Pali poetry is primarily built around the speed or the timing of vowel sounds. So it's not about rhyme. There's no rhyme, but rather it's about the musical rhythm, which is naturally produced by polysyllables. So polysyllables naturally are either half speed or full speed. So in ordinary speech, that's not particularly relevant. But in Pali poetry, it determines the rhythm of the verses. And very often the Buddha would give teachings in these short, spontaneous verses. And this was held up as an example of the Buddha's particular eloquence, his particular skill with language. So the discourse begins, Savatthi Nidanang. So this was a discourse that happened at Savatthi. Atiko bhagavad pubanha samayang navasetva patichivaram adaya yena udiyasa brahmanasa nivesanang tenupasankami. So then in the morning, the Buddha dressed, he took his bowl and robe. So this is a very standard opening when a monk is about to go for alms round. So it says that they take their bowl and their robe. That means they're going for alms round usually. And he went to the dwelling of a brahmin named Udaya. So it says, Atiko Udayo Brahmano Bhagavato Patang Odanena Puresi. So it says, then the Brahmin Udaya filled the Buddha's bowl with food. So this is very encouraging. So the Buddha went for alms round specifically to this one Brahmin's house. And that Brahmin gave him a full bowl of food. And it says, Dudiyampi, so second time as well. The next day, the Buddha also goes to the same Brahmin's house. And again, the Brahmin fills his bowl with food. And Tatiyampi, so a third time as well. The Buddha went to the Brahmin's house. And again, the Brahmin filled the Buddha's bowl with food. But on this third occasion, the Brahmin says to the Buddha, he says, Pakattako yang samano gotamo, punap punang agachati. So pakattayo, pakattaka has a double meaning here. So the one meaning of it is annoying, troublesome, irritating. So in the sense of something that keeps striking you over and over again. But there's a double meaning here, which comes up when in the Buddha's answer. So pakatika can also mean a farmer. So someone who plows the fields, tills the fields, someone who plants. So this appears to be a double meaning, which it's not clear whether this was the meaning that the Brahmin intended, but it's a meaning that the Buddha picks up in his reply. So the main point that the Brahmin seems to be making is like, oh, it's annoying that this monk keeps coming again and again. And also the fact that the Brahmin refers to the Buddha as the Samana Gautama, this indicates that the Brahmin was not yet a Buddhist. So although the Brahmin was giving food to at least one Buddhist monk, at least to the Buddha, he was not himself a Buddhist practitioner. So usually in the suttas, the term Samana Gautama it's used by someone who's not Buddhist when they're referring to the Buddha. So somebody who is Buddhist would refer to the Buddha as Bhagava, the blessed one, the fortunate one, or refer to him as Sutta, the teacher, or the Tathagata. But they would never just call him the Samana Gautama. That would, except on rare occasion. That's not normally how a Buddhist follower would refer to the Buddha. So the Buddha's reply, he says, Puna punan che vapanti bijam. So the Buddha says, again and again, they sow seeds. Puna punang vasati deva raja. Again and again, the angels send rain. Puna punang ketang kasanti kasika. So again and again, the farmers plow the fields. Puna punang danya mupeti ratang. So again and again, they bring grain to the kingdom. So this first line here, the Buddha, again, he's kind of picking up on the double meaning of this word pakatika. So the word pakatika, again, it can mean something annoying or irritating, but it also has the sense of a plowman. So someone who plows the fields or tills the fields. So it's a word that's related to the word for farmer. And so the Brahmin's complaining like, oh, this person keeps coming again and again, just like a farmer plowing the fields again and again. And the Buddha's like, well, yeah, they plant the seeds again and again. The rain falls again and again. They plow the fields again and again. And in this way, they reap a harvest of grain again and again. And then the Buddha says, Puna punang yacha ka yacha yanti. So again and again, beggars beg. Puna punang danapati dadanti. Again and again, donors give. Puna punang danapati daditva. Puna punang sagamu penti tanang. So he says, again and again, after the donors have given, again and again, they go to heaven. So here the Buddha, he's pointing to the value of doing things repeatedly. So it's not like you do something just once and that's the end of it, but rather you do something over and over again because you get good results every time. So why, it's not like a farmer when it comes to the spring, the farmer's like, well, I already did this last year. I think I'm just not going to do it this year. No point in doing it over again. But they keep doing it over and over again because they know that you get good results each time. If you do things carefully and attentively and properly, then you'll get good results. And so the Buddha also is saying like, well, this Brahmin, he's complaining about what's actually an amazing opportunity, which is to give food to a Buddhist monk. So that's already a wonderful opportunity. But especially to give food to a Buddha, that's an incredibly rare and precious opportunity. So very few people get that opportunity. And he got this opportunity actually 3 times in a row. So he should be delighting at the opportunity to give food to the Buddha, so the foremost of Buddhist monks. He should be delighting at the opportunity to give food to a Buddha over and over again. Because it's through making offerings of this sort over and over again, that one is continually born in a good destination, continually born in a pleasant world, in a pleasant life. And then the Buddha continues, again making another simile. He says, Puna punang ki ranika duhanti. So again and again they milk the cows. Puna punang vacho upeti matarang. Again and again the calf goes to its mother. Puna punang kilamati pandati cha. Puna punang gabamupeti mando. So he's saying, again and again, exhausted and trembling, the fool goes again to the womb. And he says, Punapunang jayati miyati cha. So again and again, they are born and they die. Punapunang sivatikang haranti. Again and again, they are carried to the cemetery. And then the Buddha concludes by saying, Magansha lada apunapavaya napunapunang jayati buripanyo. So he says, however, a person of broad wisdom, spacious wisdom, of vast wisdom, who has gained the path which leads to no further becoming, no renewed existence, no renewed being, does not come again and again to birth. They're not born again and again. So here the Buddha, again, he's talking about repetition. How doing something repeatedly over and over again. So there's basically two halves to the Buddha's answer. The first half, he's talking about how over and over one does acts of merit, in particular the act of generosity. Because then one is repeatedly establishing the conditions for pleasant states of existence within samsara. But then in the second one, the second half of his answer, he's pointing out how continually cycling through states of being. And here he's analogizing the slow, foolish person. That manda means idiot. That would be probably the most accurate English translation. Saying how the idiot just keeps cycling through birth and death, just like an animal, just like a baby cow wandering around chasing after its mother. Like there's no intellect, there's no consideration, there's no wisdom. It's just blindly following one's instincts. So blindly following one's instincts, the idiot is constantly being born and dying, and again and again, their body gets carried off and thrown in the cemetery. There's another sutta where the Buddha says, if you took all the bones from every time you've died, and you piled up all those bones into a big heap, it would be taller than Mount Everest. So I really love it when the Buddha uses these very potent images. A similar one is he says, if you collected all the blood that you've spilled from all the times you were beheaded. So it's very specific, not all the blood you spilled ever, but just the blood you spilled from when your head was cut off. Then that would be more blood than what would fill all the oceans in the world. Yeah, so over and over again, we're born, we die, and our body gets tossed in a cemetery. And we're born and we die and the body gets tossed in a cemetery. We're born and we die and the body gets tossed in the cemetery. And this has happened countless billions of times. This is not the first time. It's happened over and over and over and over and over again. But the Buddha says one who has vast wisdom, broad wisdom, spacious wisdom, so buripanya. So buripanya, by the way, is commonly used these days as an epithet for the Buddha. But actually it means anyone who, again, their wisdom is well advanced. So someone whose wisdom is approaching the stage of awakening or at the stage of awakening. It says they establish themselves in the path which leads to no further becoming. So this is the Noble Eightfold Path. So our basic framework of practice which we do. And again, it's important to remember that the purpose of Buddhist practice is to end the cycle of rebirth. So it's not just to get a pleasant rebirth, because even if you're reborn in the most pleasant heaven realms, it's always temporary. And you're still trapped in the cycle of birth and death, and you're still subject to being reborn in the lower realms. So as long as you're anywhere within samsara, you'll keep cycling through both the best parts and the worst parts. It's kind of like a city that has like the really nice, wealthy, pretty neighborhoods with low crime, and then like the bad neighborhoods where everything's filthy and the food is terrible and there's lots of horrible things happening. And you keep moving from one neighborhood to another. It's like, well, you're kind of not getting anywhere. Maybe for a little while you have nice conditions, but then you wind up in unpleasant conditions again, even terrible conditions again, constantly cycling through. So the Buddha is saying one who has this vast wisdom, which understands the inherent suffering of the cycle of birth and death, they're no longer enamored with it. It loses its shine, loses its appeal. So then they establish themselves on the path which leads to no more becoming, which leads to freedom from the cycle of birth and death, freedom from samsara. And so the sutta concludes, when this was said, the Brahmin Udaya said to the Blessed One, magnificent Sir Gautama, magnificent Sir Gautama. And it gives the standard statement which people in the suttas are commonly said to make when the Buddha convinces them. So saying, it's like you've turned upright what was upside down, or shown the path to someone who is lost, or brought a lamp into a dark room so that people could see. It says in the same way the Buddha has taught the Dhamma in many ways. And it concludes with the Brahmin Udaya saying that he will be a disciple of the Buddha for the rest of his life. So he takes the three refuges, so refuges in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and commits to being a disciple of the Buddha for the rest of his life. So that's the end of this discourse. So quite short and relatively straightforward discourse. At this time, we can respect the sutta with 3 sadhus, and then I'll take any questions that you might have. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So hello to all the people joining in online. So hello to Charles Lee, Michael, Jayanta, Alex, Miriam, Amaranta, Victoria, Ashok, Edward, Venerable Nandasiri. Hello, Bhante. Hello to Rupali, Gita, Anna Maria. Is this the Anna Maria that I just saw in Italy a few weeks ago? So hello, good to see you again. Hello to Guater and Charlotte. And I actually don't see any questions online yet. Any questions from the monastery residents? Do you have a question?
Yeah. So if someone who becomes a stream enter, does that person stop the cycle of like cycling over, going into the womb again?
So a stream enterer, what they've done is they've developed sufficient wisdom that they will definitely come out of the cycle of birth and death. So they're not going to keep running in circles. There's now an end in sight. It's kind of like if you've been wandering lost in a forest for a long time, and this whole time you've never known the way out of the forest. You've just been wandering around in circles. But then one day in the distance, you see the edge of the forest. You're not there yet, but now you know the way out, and you're just going to go in that direction until you get out of the forest. So it might still take you a while. So it says in the suttas that someone can still be reborn up to 7 times as a stream enterer. But those 7 lifetimes will always be as a human or as a deva. So they'll never be reborn in the lower realms. They'll never be reborn as an animal or a ghost or in the hell realms. Yeah. So they'll avoid the worst parts of samsara. But they're still in samsara for a while yet. And it can be quite a long time. So especially if one is reborn as a deva, you can have a very long lifetime. So a string mentor might still have a while left. But instead of an endless circle, it's now just a straight line with a clear ending point. So in that sense, they've transcended the cycle of birth and death, but they still have some time left.
So you mentioned, like, in the last paragraph, it's referred to the Noble Eightfold Path, the notion of becoming. Is that what you mentioned? I mentioned something of becoming and equals to the Noble Eightfold Path. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so the Pali phrase here is magancha ladda apunapavaya. So maga means aryo atangiko mago, so the Noble Eightfold Path.
Mm-hmm.
Ladda means gained, or attained, or reached, or acquired. So one who has established themselves on the path, one who is committed to the Noble Eightfold Path. So magang ladda means. And apunapavaya, so puna means again or repeatedly. Bhava means becoming or being or existence. So apunabhava means not repeating existence, so not repeatedly becoming. And the case here is the dative case, so it means for the purpose of. So one is practicing the Noble Eightfold Path for the purpose of no more renewed existence, so not repeatedly becoming something. So this is it's the purpose of the Eightfold Path. It's to break the cycle of birth and death. So it's recognizing that, as he's saying, like the idiot keeps jumping into wombs and getting born and dying over and over again. But once we start to realize how foolish this is, we're like, okay, I really need to get out of this mess. And it's a bit like an addict. An addict is in these cycles of constantly pursuing and using whatever they're addicted to. And at some point, there can be this realization of like, oh, I'm in this pointless cycle of self-torment. I really need to find a way out of this. So that's the dawning moment when we realize, wow, I've been caught in this like pointless cycle of self-torment for billions of eons, countless lifetimes. I need to start finding a way out of this mess. So that's when one establishes oneself on the path of no more becoming. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. And there's a couple questions online now. So Marian asks, how can one come out of a lower realm if you were born in a lower realm like an animal, for example? So it's quite difficult, but you do it through kindness, through generosity, through self-restraint. This is how one moves to the higher realms. But it's difficult. In the lower realms, you have few opportunities to make merit, and life is very challenging. So wild animals, for example, wild animals have a really hard life. They're struggling just to get enough food to survive. And most wild animals are constantly at risk of being killed by other animals. And they have no reliable shelter. They have no real safety. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult for them to practice generosity. It's very difficult for them to practice kindness and self-restraint. It is possible, which is why every now and then they get reborn in a higher realm. But it's difficult. Another way it can happen is that if one accumulates a lot of good karma in one life, but one also has a lot of bad karma, whether from that life or previous lives, then in your next life, the bad karma might be what takes precedence. So you might be born as an animal or in a lower realm. But once that bad karma wears itself out, then the good karma you've made in the past might then take predominance, and you'll be reborn as a human or a deva in the following life. So that can also happen. So karma doesn't always ripen in the immediate next life. It can skip lives or even many lives. So one of the ways that you can work with this is to make a lot of good karma in this life, make a lot of merit in this life. And that will help to make sure that you have a stockpile of good karma, so that if you do wind up in a lower realm, then your stockpile of good karma might help you get out more quickly. And Charyaputta asks, does this sutta happen when the Buddha has just recently awakened and hasn't established the Sangha? So most of the suttas are not time-stamped. There's actually only a very small number of suttas where we can know for sure at what point in the timeline of the Buddha's life the sutta happened. So most suttas, we don't know. So this one, we don't know. All we know is that the Buddha was going alms round, and for some reason he targeted this one Brahmin's house 3 times in a row. And most likely, actually, the reason the Buddha did this was because he saw that this particular person, so the Brahmin Udaya, the Buddha probably saw that this person was ready for Buddhism. So he was deliberately going for alms to the same Brahmin's house over and over again, because he saw that this Brahmin was ready to understand the Dhamma. And that if he went repeatedly, then this Brahmin would have the opportunity to take on the Buddhist path, which is what happened. This, by the way, is one of the reasons why it's very important for monks to go alms round, is because one of the great virtues of alms round is that it helps to share the Dhamma. It gives the opportunity for those who are ready to learn the Dhamma to learn the Dhamma. And often there are people who they would never, of their own accord, they would never seek out a Buddhist monastery. But then when a Buddhist monk appears in their life, then they're like, what is this? I should go find out. I should go ask questions or learn more. So this is very much my experience, and especially recently in Italy, where we were doing alms round most of the time and spent a lot of time wandering through Italy. There were a lot of people who they wouldn't necessarily ever go to a monastery or seek out monks, but when monks come into their lives, then it reminds them that there's something more valuable in life. It reminds them of their own inner spiritual longing, which they haven't been expressing or they haven't been nourishing. So it's actually, I find it really touching here that the way the Buddha begins this discourse is with this simple act of just going for alms round, and going for alms round until the person shows an interest. And we have another question from online. This one is a little off topic, but we have time this morning, so I'll go ahead and take it. So Richard says, is wisdom more important than loving kindness? The fact that you asked this question shows that you're lacking in both wisdom and loving kindness. Because if your wisdom is well developed, then you will naturally also be full of loving kindness. So loving kindness is a natural effect of wisdom. And in fact, if you meet someone who seems to be wise, but doesn't display any loving kindness, seems to be completely lacking in loving kindness, and that's a sign that their wisdom is actually not that great. Because as one's wisdom grows, one recognizes the invaluable nature of loving kindness. One recognizes that loving kindness is, again, it's an expression of wisdom. So the deeper one understands karma, the more appreciation one has for the karmic power of metta. the deeper one understands the training of the mind, then the more appreciation one has for the training potential of metta as a way of transforming the mind. And the deeper one understands non-self, the more one recognizes that one is not separate from others. So metta arises naturally in the mind of a person of advanced wisdom. So yeah, I would definitely not say that wisdom is more important than loving kindness. Rather, I would say that as one cultivates loving kindness, that supports the development of wisdom. And as one develops wisdom, one gains a deeper appreciation for the value of loving kindness. And that's the last question from online. So at this time, if there's no more questions, then we can go ahead and end the session. So it looks like that's it for now. So please join us again this evening. So we'll have another Dhamma talk and discussion at 7:30 this evening. And then again tomorrow, 8 a.m. Sutta study and 7:30 p.m. monk chat. So we can end it this time with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And we'll see you next time.